Mark. And action!
Good morning, sunshine.
Hello, and welcome to the polling room. We're so happy to have you with us today.
My name is Steve Procko, and I'm the director of the short film Vote Early, Vote Often. Vote Early, Vote Often was a film that we shot in South Florida at Altman Procko Productions soundstage in April of the year 2000. And I'm going to do a running commentary underneath the film as you watch it to give you some insight into exactly what we did to make this film. The concept for the film came from screenwriter Bob Small, who came up with a rough idea for a film about voting probably 2 months prior to us actually shooting the film. This is a good overview of the set that we built for the movie. It was a small 7 by 7 foot room. The little mouse that's crawling along the top there wasn't in the actual script. We kind of came up with the idea when we put the camera up on the crane and was looking over the top of the set that it'd be neat to have a little bit of action.
Good morning, sunshine.
And we shot the film in one day. We had a very limited budget. We spent a total of $8,000 making this short film. The opening scene you're seeing here is when the actor comes into the room. The actor is Todd Allen Durkin, and I'd worked with Todd on a feature called Golf Balls that I also collaborated with Bob Small and Judy Altman on. Back to the look of this room. This was again about a 7 by 7 foot room. The walls broke away. The camera position I'm looking at right here is from a side view is actually me standing in the position where the wall broke away from. And then the cutting to the front view that you're seeing right here was actually shooting through the plexiglass that comprised the screen that we used for projecting images into the set. For the sound here, where you've got the wows and flutters and warbles and all that, I used two off-the-shelf pieces of software. One was called Vegas and the other one is called SoundForge. And basically I was able to actually put the wows and flutters and do what amounts to basically Foley work right on my desktop, and it worked out pretty nicely.
Or just give me credit.
And we used a crane. This is a view of the crane shot for the overhead. We used a Cam8 crane. It's a remote jib arm type crane that operates on a joystick and allows you to put the camera just about anywhere you want and make interesting moves. So we utilized that in several places, and I thought it gave a real good feel to the claustrophobic aspects of the set. The projection system we used was just a straight standard RGB projector with my laptop, and all of the screens that we projected into the room were screens that I had animated in Flash. Flash is a software that's used for a lot of animation on the internet, and I utilized it to drive the different pieces of animation that we needed for each scene. And there were about 8 different scenes within the film that comprised the whole film, so we actually broke that into 8 different pieces of animation and had the person that was operating the projector trigger the scene changes based on where we were within the script by simply hitting the enter button. And the other good aspect of the RGB side of the projector is the fact that you don't have to worry about the issue of sync from film to video, where you would have to be playing video back at 24 frames per second in order to sync and have dialogue. This was in RGB, so there was never a syncing issue. It was always whatever we wanted to put on the screen we could put at any time, and whatever we wanted to project into the room we could project at any time. And this set had a lot of other gimmicks in it. Besides the projection system that worked really nicely, it also had an ongoing gag with a spark happening, which was accomplished with basically a car battery hardwired right into a switch that, as we'd make contact, it would just spark, and we burned out a lot of wire doing that, but it worked pretty well, and we actually did try to cue everything to specific things in the script. This is a good example of a piece of software called Poser, which is a Meta Creations software. I use that to animate the face of the woman, and then brought those pieces within Flash and used that to animate through to the specific parts of the script that we wanted her to be in. And Poser is a nice piece of software that allows you to work in kind of 3D animation, realistic human characters, and I thought it was pretty nice. I created several different scenes where she would either be listening to him or making mouth movements that was sort of in sync with the picture. This is our little scanner device, and it was really nothing more than a data light, really cut very harshly, that we panned up and down as we put his hand there. And that was a little cutaway scene that we did. The way we shot this was pretty much 8 different scenes, as I said, and we broke it down in such a way that I literally would shoot the front view and jump right to the side view and then jump to the crane view in continuous sequence. So it was very easy to maintain a continuity on the general master shots, and then all the little things were handled just as standard cutaways after the fact. We actually shot the film kind of out of sequence. We shot the mind control sequence first, because that was going to take the most out of the actor, and then we actually shot the last scene second, and then we proceeded to go to the front of the film and shoot it all the way through. That's a good shot of our little control panel. It was made up of a lot of just doodads and things, old computer parts and all that. And it was a lot of fun to kind of come up with the things that we'd put into this room. There was a lot of detail that went into it between the control panel and some of the graphics and things like that. This is a good example of the projection system right onto the actor's face. It's pretty interesting in the way that it acts almost as a key light, and that's became an interesting element within the film. And the concept for this film, the basic idea of a guy being in a voting booth from hell, came kind of originally from Bob Small coming up with an idea of a film based in a voting booth, and it kind of expanded further as we started hearing things about voting on the internet and how that was becoming a pretty hot topic in Arizona. And just coincidentally, right prior to shooting this, we heard of a book by David S. Broder, who is a Washington Post Pulitzer Prize winning columnist. He wrote a book called Democracy Derailed, and it talks about the concept of direct democracy, and it was just very timely in that sense that this film was ready to go at the time that this discussion is going on about the concept of voting on the internet. Probably the most crucial thing that allowed us to get this film shot in a one-day period of time was the pre-production planning. We pre-lit in one day, and at the end of that pre-light, we actually, with crew still on set, did full rehearsals and blocking for all of the scenes. And this allowed us to really come in the next morning when we started shooting and know exactly what we were going to be doing without any questions. One of the things that we did that enabled the actor to be able to interact with the voice was we used an earwick, which is basically a little earpiece that is in his right ear, and you actually see it on this scene right here. Most of the time you don't get a view of it, and if I didn't tell you it was there, you probably would never have noticed it. But he's actually hearing the actress that's reading the dialogue of the voice in the machine. She's in another room in a booth, and they're able to play off each other because we actually would record the voice of her and his voice at the same time. And I really felt this was the only way to do a movie that was of this nature, where you had this interactive stuff going on. There would have been no way to have figured out the lengths of time you needed to allow for dialogue to occur, and this way he was able to hear her and she was able to see him, so they were able to act the whole role all the way through.
How do you know what I like?
I handled the post-production for this film on a standard desktop computer. I utilized a Gateway 600 megahertz Pentium 3 microprocessor and a Pinnacle Systems DV500 card that came bundled with Adobe Premiere. I wanted to really try out Premiere and see if I could push the limits on what Premiere can do, and I think I have done that with this film. I think that you reach the point where you have multi-layers of audio like this film had, where I was at one point up to 13 different channels of audio, and it really is taxing the limitations of what Premiere is. My background is really more of an Avid editor. I edited the feature film I finished last year on an Avid, and all of my commercial work is edited on an Avid. But the Premiere was inexpensive because it was on my desktop, and so it was a good test of seeing what you can do with very limited post-production funds to complete a film. This particular film started out with just a film transfer at Broadcast Video in Miami, and after the transfer, I went ahead and let them sync all the scenes from our original DATs. So I actually ended up with my full transfer and all my sound elements all in one place on my Digibeta Master. From the Digibeta, I made a clone to DV, and then I used the DV to digitize into the Adobe Premiere system.
You're the one that shoved me into this prison to participate in this sham. Day after day.
Out of the total $8,000 we spent in making this short film, the biggest expense was actually the purchase of film itself. We used Kodak stock, and it was a high-speed 72-77 stock, which had pretty nice grain for high-speed film. The next biggest expense was the processing of the film, followed by the actual money spent in the construction of the scenery. This is the beginning of the mind control sequence, which is like the climax of the film. And this is one of those sequences where I was able to pre-visualize a lot of what the whole film would look like, but this is one sequence that, until it all got put into the cutting process, we weren't really going to be sure what things were going to look like. So I shot a lot of footage around this and used a dado light to create that overhead look. We also shot the sequence first in the overall shooting day because I knew it was going to take a lot out of the actor to pull this off. So he spent like 2 hours screaming and yelling and doing all the things that you see here. In some cases I had the camera right up against his face, and we actually had like the fog from his breath on the lens
you now understand your position in
I'm real pleased with the way
society
that
and with the
sequence actually worked out. We ramped some of the scenes up in post-production by speeding them up about 20 times what their actual speed was. That worked really well with things like a crane shot that moved around in a 90-degree angle, so we could start out in real time and make the 90-degree move at 20 times speed and then come back to real time. I think Todd did a great job right here too of playing a contrast between the guy that was just really, super nervous and angry, and now he's very complacent and relaxed. So he showed a nice range of emotion in there. And then, of course, this is another fun sequence where the patriotic music plays, and he kind of gets delivered, like Pavlov's dog, his little treat. And the Wedge Dixie thing was kind of a real way out in left field idea. Kind of a Twinkie drops out of the sky and feeds you a little bit of sugar, take a pellet and move on type of thing. And we wanted a real Rube Goldberg feeling, so we had like it dropping out of the sky and then another thing that would come on and push the button up against him, and then of course it led into the role of the wife of this character coming in and putting a Band-Aid on the finger that he had gotten blood taken from earlier in the film. So it was just a real kind of odd sequence and really helped kind of pay off the whole thing, that as he walks out the door, that this little polling room is actually in his apartment, and so it made for a nice little touch at the end. Again, I think the film was a lot of fun to do, and I really want to do some more short films because I find them to be a real good way of just creatively expressing yourself and trying new things. So anyway, I hope this was a helpful tool in how we went about making the film, and thanks for watching and listening.